Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and we are back after a Sunday victory, a 1 o'clock perfect weather game with great sunshine, the legacy game, all 80s everything, and an 80s style football score, 14-7. The Giants beat the Commanders. How you doing, Mike?
Oh, very great. Beginning of rivalry week for me. It's Giants Commanders, it's Knicks Celtics, it's Florida Georgia, it's Jets Giants. Big week. So at least we got one win out of the way to get started for this. So I am super pumped to talk about a rare win for this New York Football Giants. Let's get into it.
I am glad to be talking about a win. I don't really know how this episode would have went if we lost, really, truly, honestly, partially due to the amount of losses, partially due to the team that we lost to. But in any event, during this Just Giants game review of the Giants and Commanders, I will be drinking beer by Autodidact Brewing. I am going to be drinking, again, the Amanda's Wings Double IPA that got me so almost fucked up during the last time we were doing this. This is, of course, like I said last time, all the proceeds to this go towards Melissa's Wings, which is a cancer organization, and October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so we thought this was a good time to do that. In any case, I'm not getting any money to promote this beer, and just along those lines, you should check out our podcast and share just the way I'm sharing Autodidact Beer's promotion. In any case, Giants win 14-7 over the Commanders. Solid game right from the beginning for the defense. I want to start right there. I went into this with some stats, which I'm not usually a big stats guy. But last week, I mentioned that the Atlanta Falcons were going into week 6 with only 5 sacks, and they came out of week 6 with 10 sacks. The Giants came into this game with 5 sacks, and they came out with 11 sacks. They were on their ass right away. Sam Howell was just running for his life. I mean, he was gun shy before the second half started, right?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of 3 things. I think it was a combination that the defense came to play. I think that we're dealing with a team that has a lot of problems on the offensive line and a rookie quarterback that's getting to that point, or not a rookie, but a first-year starter that's getting to that point in the season now where he's starting to see ghosts. And quite frankly, I saw a very poor coaching job by Washington. I mean, we didn't see any of Riverboat Ron. We saw a very, a resistance to use his running game, a resistance for everything. So I think those 3 factors in was a perfect storm for this defense to really start doing their thing. It's a game that, a quarterback that Wink Martindale loves to feast on. Quarterbacks that are young and inexperienced and get them rattled. And we got him rattled for sure.
It got down to the point where they didn't really have an answer for anything we were doing in the defensive line. So by the second half, after we registered our 6th sack, I believe on their opening drive, they just completely changed their offense to be running game and one-look throws. And I mean one look. If it's covered, throw it anyway. And you could see Sam Howell was just launching shit in the second half. Mm-hmm. Every completion they had was a gamble. It was either going to be a flag was thrown for holding, and you're just hoping for that, or, he just makes a miracle. Terry McLaurin had some miracle catches in this game where he was covered and they just threw it anyway, and it just worked sometimes. It was just it was the flip of a coin. And there were other ones where, he's just launching it 10 yards out of bounds. He really was just getting rid of the ball immediately. And that was 100% their answer to our pass rush, which finally, I mean, it's nice to just say that.
Well, we know we have it in. These guys have it in them. It's just we haven't had an opportunity to. And I think that also it's a rare game where we had a lead where the pass rush can kind of pin their ears back and go after a quarterback. Usually these games were down and teams are just running the ball or just doing safe things that kind of neutralizes a bit of a pass rush. So it was a pleasant thing. It felt almost in the reverse of what we saw like in the Dallas game, where every snap Daniel Jones is running for his life or being forced to do things where he's not ready to do. And we saw it in reverse this week.
It quite literally looked like that. Like if I were colorblind and I couldn't see logos, I would have thought I was just watching a replay of that game.
Yeah. for sure.
I'm giving the pass rush, and I guess specifically Dexter Lawrence, but because I think he was the best member of that pass rush yesterday. But I'm giving them collectively a star. I know that I said going into this game that they needed to feast. So like it feels kind of weird to give a star for doing your job, but I mean, how am I supposed to complain? You know, they did exactly what I needed them to do, and so they get a star. I mean, 6 sacks is pretty crazy.
I'll give the whole defense a star, and especially I'll give the coaching staff a star because I alluded to this last week that, after the Buffalo game, very disappointed we lost, but this team has not quit.
No, not at
And
all.
this absolutely looks like a team that has ignored the 1-5 record, has ignored, you know, the the hole they're in, ignored the injuries that have put us in this position. They've ignored that offense versus defense thing, and they are still playing with heart and still playing like there is something. Now, what are they playing for is to be determined. Are they playing for this coaching staff? Are they playing to be showcased for the potential trade deadline? Are they who knows what? But at least everybody's still on the same page and trying and giving effort. So that we can all be thankful for. You're right. It seems stupid to say we want guys who are getting paid millions of dollars and professional athletes to try, but it's human nature too when your season's just about lost to kind of and this team has not done that yet.
Well,
So,
it's just human nature to be like, man, I did my job. What do you want from me?
Yeah.
I mean, what we're asking for is for the defense to make up for a very hurt offense, and even when they're not hurt, an offense that is underperforming. And that's asking them to do more than their job, and they're doing it. I'm going to extend that further. I'm going to give specifically Deonte Banks a star for this game. The interception looked excellent, but just in general, he is continuing play of just solid rookie corner play, and I don't believe that we've really pointed him out. I mean, I think we've mentioned it, but I'm giving him a star. He got the pick in this game, and not for nothing. We can talk about Washington having kind of a porous offensive line. We can talk about Sam Howell being a first-year quarterback. They have really good wide receivers. They have a very good group of wide receivers, and they were blanketed. Like I said, he gave up some catches, but he was in good position. Terry McLaurin is just different, man. Would you say Terry McLaurin is like among the 5 best wide receivers in the division? He's got to be, right?
Oh, in the division?
With CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, it's hard to think of someone who's...
He'd be wide receiver 1 on this team.
He would be wide receiver 1 on this team.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair statement. And the other thing, too, about Deonte Banks, you don't have the security blanket of Adoree Jackson because he was out. So it was a game where you want him to keep progressing as a rookie, but now there's added responsibility.
He became CB1.
You're CB1 in this game, and he played like CB1. So
I also like he has, in my opinion, the perfect amount of swag right now. You know what I mean? Like he has just enough talk in him where it's clearly not like an issue on the field. I haven't seen him get pushed or shoved or anything like that. He backs it up with his play. I don't know. He just walks that fine line of like just the perfect amount of swag and confidence. For a rookie, he's playing really well according to what my expectations are for a rookie corner. He's not Sauce Gardner, but he's damn good. I don't know. I love the pick. I'm happy with Deonte Banks so far.
Yeah. I mean, we have tried through the draft, we have tried through free agency to really get, a lockdown cornerback, and through the draft has not been successful, if not for a long, long time. And
well, I mean, I think who are the last couple they picked? Eli Apple, I think you can say is a failure, at least in New York. He has made himself. I mean, he's a Super Bowl corner. I mean, that is what it is.
Yeah.
But he's made himself a starter in the league. He's also a meme. But Prince Amukamara, I think, was a solid. He was just solid. He was not outstanding. He was never a stat guy, but he's another one who went around the league.
Was he a first-round pick? I don't remember.
Yes, he was a first-round.
He was a first-round pick.
He was around 15 or 18. Deonte Banks was further down the list.
Yeah, I feel more upside in him. I see potential for being, for outkicking your draft spot. I think with him, and that's very encouraging to me.
And I don't know how long this is going to last, but there's something to be said about him being like the right fit for the defense we're currently running as well.
Mhm.
I don't. I never felt that way during the last, let's say, 6 or 7 years of the Mark Ross, Jerry Reese GM era, where we were not necessarily drafting for our coaches. We were just drafting like tools or something. I don't know what we were doing.
Right. Drafting not to get fired.
Yeah. Um. One last thing I have on the defense. I flirted with the idea of giving Kayvon a fart for the drop pick.
Something I was thinking about that also, but it's almost like the same category that I would give, and we're going to talk about Saquon Barkley fumbling on the, inside the 5 yard line. That it's a fart play, but I don't give a fart necessarily to where, you got to catch that.
Both of those, you could attribute both of those to the same stamp of that almost lost us the game. The only reason I'm going to put Kayvon higher than Saquon Barkley in terms of, I'm going to weight that a little heavier, is because that really was a shoe-in pick six. And even if it wasn't a pick six, you just catch that and go out of bounds, you're already like in the red zone.
You've done everything.
I mean, that's basically leaving points on the board. Saquon, that's also leaving points on the board, but it's really hard for me to compare an easy lob, no one is around you, literally no one is around you, dropped interception to, in the pile getting the ball stripped from you. You're running back. Fumbles happen.
My only counter to that is your job is to be a running back, is to run the ball and hold on to the ball, especially in spots like that. And he's a defensive end. He's not a cornerback. He's not a receiver. So that's the only little difference I have.
Fair.
Picking nits a little bit. And again, they're not farts because of the play of the game. Both guys played well in the game, not to get stars necessarily, but I don't know if I want to give like a special. It's kind of like saying, if you're a one hit wonder in music and you have one great song, I'm not putting you in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but that song deserves some special recognition. And that's kind of feel with that. It's like one screw up doesn't say you get a fart for the day, but
I didn't. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I didn't give a fart to either of those guys, but I did write them down as honorable mentions for farts for both Barkley for the fumble and Kayvon for the drop pick. Because let's face it, with the end of the game, the way it happened, and we'll get to that, but they very, very well could have lost this game to a touchdown 2-point conversion at the end of the game.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
both of those plays would have been things we would have been talking about for a full hour had that been the case.
Sure, this game was razor thin. I mean, it felt like we dominated them, and when we turn to offense, we'll talk about it, but it was a 14-7 game.
I do want to talk about special teams before we get to the offense, though. I'm going to give a fart to the entire special teams. We suck. We missed a field goal, and I know we blocked one in this game too, but we missed a field goal. 2 muffed punts by 2 different players. It is clear also that they still have no fucking plan. They have no plan at returner. They have none. And they continue to see week after week issues at returner, and there is still no plan. There's nothing at all. We'll put Shep back there. He muffs a punt. We'll put Slayton back there. I mean, it got to the point where the announcers on TV were pointing out that the fans were Bronx cheering every fair catch. I mean, this is the state of this team, is we cannot catch a fucking punt.
Well, we did sign somebody just in the last couple of hours.
So the coaching staff decided to rectify the situation by signing somebody named Olszewski or something like that, who's an all-pro special teams player. He hasn't returned, I don't think, since 2020. He's most recently a gunner. Look,
his name is Gunner.
His name is Gunner. Was he? Never mind. Listen,
we'll put that on the Patreon page as a great blooper.
Look, I'm glad they're finally addressing it. Yes. I feel like I don't need to re-review, but I'll give you the Cliff's Notes. It's bullshit to me that they had Jamison Crowder on this roster, who's been a great returner for the Commanders thus far this year. He was a good returner in this game. They had 2 other guys that were good returners in Khalil Pimpleton and Jaden Mickens or something like that.
Mickens.
None of those guys made the roster, despite the fact that they were good, but a guy who has never returned before was the penciled-in returner simply because they didn't want a running back to hit the market.
They tried
That's
to
it.
kill two birds with one stone and save a potential draft pick.
It
That's
is a
all.
very, very obvious blemish on this front office and coaching staff. We will get to grading that at the end of this year, but I mean, I can tell you right now, they're getting a shit grade for that. I mean, they really they blew off special teams as if the kickoff and the punt have already been removed from the game, and they haven't.
Right.
So I'm furious about it because it almost lost this game. Sterling Shepard's muff really, truly almost lost this game. They could not move the ball at all, but we gave them the red zone, and they scored a
Yeah.
touchdown.
You cannot do that.
Can't do that.
The only thing you cannot do in a game like this is give them opportunities, and that's just what we did. And it was right at the start of the half. It was just one of those times where you can put this game away, even if we
It gave
have to
them
punt.
confidence early in the second half.
Sure. Exactly.
All right, so offense. I have a star to hand out for offense.
One more thing about special teams.
Oh, go for it. Yep.
Your boy Graham Gano.
Oh yeah, he missed.
He gets a fart for me. Obviously, I get zero tolerance with him, but he's not been that good lately. He's been a little, and I get it. It was, the wind was a little strange in the stadium yesterday. It was kind of on our side. If you're watching on TV, we are on where are we on the left side?
We are on the right side.
We're on the
of
right
TV
side.
broadcast. We're on the opposite side of where the Giants come out of the tunnel.
Okay, so we were looking at the flags on the goalpost, and ours was a little swirly and blowing towards us when the other were not at all. So that might have been I don't want to give excuses for anybody. Maybe the issues catching punts.
He did kick towards us too.
Yeah. So I'm not giving excuses, but still, he has to be better. He has not been that good in the last couple of weeks.
I agree.
He needs to step up.
Offense. I have a star to give out. Only one.
Okay.
It's probably not who people think. I'm going to give it to Jalen Hyatt. I know he only caught two passes on 5 targets, but 75 yards. I mean, he was the field flipper that this team needs. And the reason I'm giving him a star is because he's doing everything I wanted him to do in year 1. It's a shame it took us to this week to do it, to show it, especially since in training camp it felt like he had to scream to get first-team reps. And then when he did, he immediately did it in practice. I mean, it's clear that that's where he belonged, and they were kind of inching him along. When he's on the field and when we're throwing at him, I mean, he was 2 of 5. He very nearly had a touchdown catch that would have been a SportsCenter highlight. Very, very nearly had that one as well. I mean, it would be like an indisputable star at that point. But basically, I'm just giving him a star because it's not his fault. He's doing literally everything that he needs to do in this offense in year 1. I have expectations for him to continue to develop as a wide receiver and not just be Deshaun Jackson. I need him to develop a route tree over the next couple of years. But for year 1, for him to learn slants, go routes, and comebacks and run them efficiently with the quarterback, that's more than enough for year 1.
I don't know if he'll ever be a wide receiver 1 at the level of like an AJ Brown or something, but something. If we could ever, like through free agency or through the draft, get a real superstar receiver and having him as your wide receiver 2, that makes an offense very, very dangerous downfield. So, this offense is not going to be built over one off season or even 2 off seasons, but that's a very nice piece to have. The combination of him and Wan'Dale Robinson are, very good supplemental long-term pieces for me as we move forward. I have 2 stars.
One sec, just last note on Hyatt. I totally agree. I think that he fills a role on this offense that was previously held by Darius Slayton, who's fast, but he's not fast, if that makes sense.
He's not electric.
Yeah, correct. That's what it is. It's really that's not trying to take anything away from Slayton.
Nope.
That just means Hyatt is just different.
I don't think defensive coordinators are staying up at 3 a.m. saying, what am I going to do against Darius Slayton? I think they might start sleeping till maybe 1 a.m. about Jalen Hyatt. And that's all you want. Any extra,
brain power,
brain synapses working on anything to help this offense is a good thing. And I think that's what we're working on. I have 2 stars. One, just for the offensive line in general.
Okay.
The beating that this line has been taking for the last couple weeks and really this whole season through to incompetence and or injuries. I don't need the 7 blocks of granite. I need a offensive line who can pass block just long enough that we can take shots, more vertical routes, more down the field ones. I need an offensive line to just give enough so every running attempt is at -1, no gain or 1 yard. And they did that for the most part. And, again, I don't care who this defense is in the NFL. We haven't seen any of that for the longest time. We've seen, 2 quarterbacks running for their lives most of the season, and Tyrod Taylor looked as comfortable as a Giants quarterback is going to look this season to this point. So I have to give that offensive line a star. It's a sliding scale star, but I think they deserve it. And
I'm with you there.
As much as I am not a fan, and the next segment we're going to talk about future things, I have to give a star to Tyrod Taylor. I'm going to be fair. This is exactly what you want in a backup quarterback to do. I felt like he was playing within the game plan and what his role is. Tyrod Taylor is not a backup quarterback on a team that's going to the playoffs this year. He is not a quarterback where we need to win a game to, maintain a wild card spot. He is a quarterback that, has to keep this team from falling into chaos and becoming 1-6, and we're screwed, and all of a sudden, there's anarchy on this team. And I think I saw a lot less of the creating my own personal resume in this game. I saw a lot less of freelancing on his own. I saw a lot less of putting himself in danger because, again, still had Tommy DeVito as the backup quarterback, and Tommy DeVito is like basically having Grump out there being quarterback. So I think he played
I'm a local kid.
Hey, exactly. Let's get all excited. Can you change your last name to something that sounds like they're out of Goodfellas? It'd be perfect.
No.
Yeah, great. So, I think he played a more mature game in understanding what his role is on this team, and for that, I don't care what his numbers are. I think the fact that this coaching staff trusts him, and I think this having the offensive line and him trusting this offensive line a little bit allowed more vertical downfield, more things over the middle, more of what we think this offense could be. Again, he is our backup quarterback. We'll talk in a minute about comments that were made and what's the next steps, but for what he did, I have to give him a star. But I will say one thing though. For everybody who wants to get into that conversation about is there a quarterback controversy going forward, we scored 14 points in this game.
Well, so,
do you know what 14 points in this league for a league average of offense puts you?
In the
30th.
Bottom, yeah.
It puts you 30th out of 32. The Giants, and I think the other one was Carolina maybe. So we're not all of a sudden the fastest game on turf. We are not the Dolphins. We are not some run and shoot team. It's still 14 points is still not good enough, but at least there's a level of competency we saw, which is what we need for right now.
So I'll agree with that. I think that he did play a more mature game. That's probably star worthy. I didn't give him a star, but I probably should have. And the reason I didn't give him a star is because this was a game in which so he played last week against the Bills, which is no slouch. Bills are not a slapdick team, as Snacks texted me earlier today. But he's right. They are not a slapdick team, no matter how poorly they played, how sloppy they played. That was a night game in Buffalo in front of a very loud crowd. That was a loud crowd, man.
Yes.
However, in 8 quarters, he has scored 2 touchdowns. So that's the reason I didn't give him a star. But you're right. This was not a game where I felt like his personal resume was being padded. This was a game where he was trying to get a win. That being said, this is the first week that I know of in which Brian Daboll took over all of the offensive meetings. It seems like there was a very choreographed game plan. And then once we came out of halftime, that game plan no longer applied because Washington was adjusting in the locker room. And we did fuck all in the second half. Now, I will grant Tyrod Taylor this. Saquon Barkley fumbled in the red zone, okay? That's fair. That is a fair point to give
Sure,
Tyrod Taylor.
sure.
I am going to say that I think the running game and the way that this game was coached to win. I like that we took shots downfield. I liked when we took shots downfield. I didn't feel like we had any drives that were like, why the fuck did we just throw 3 times? You know what I mean? Like, even though this game was a punt fest and rewatching it was brutal, let me tell you. Holy
We,
shit.
we even said it during the game. It's like, God, how many punts have we seen in this game? It felt like at least 12.
I got to tell you, I tried to rewatch it last night. I fell asleep watching it. I had to rewatch it again this morning. I had to watch the second half again because it was not an
It's a
exciting
slog.
game.
It's a slog. Yeah.
And that's what we predicted. That's fine. And I think that the game planning and the running game, the offensive line, everything was schemed to win around the problems that we have against a bad team. And I think that that's good. But it's clear to me that when they adjusted, we were kind of just shit out of luck. And we had to bank on our lead and bank on our defense and kill clock. And they very nearly lost this game because of that special teams play. So
Don't let completions downfield and even attempts downfield cloud your vision that Daniel Jones is no longer the quarterback of this team. There's a lot of factors into what you saw, and those are shiny objects that don't tell you the whole story of everything.
well,
That's what I have to say.
let me. I'm going to take my quarterback conversation is very succinct, so I'm not gonna. I'm gonna keep you long listening to this bullshit. But many things can be true at the same time. To me, Daniel Jones has taken a step back from last year's improvements. Everything is well documented, so I don't need to repeat it all. But specifically, pocket movement and eyes downfield is not this year what it was last year. And that is probably due to the first game of the year being what it was, and then the injuries that followed immediately after. Remember, in one half, Daniel Jones has more touchdowns than Tyrod Taylor in 2 games. Just something to keep in mind. 4 touchdowns attributable to Daniel Jones in the second half of the Arizona game.
Which you have to count. I don't want to hear, well, that doesn't count. Yes, it does.
Well, I mean, yeah, but it is fair to say that right now, Tyrod Taylor is running the offense better than Daniel Jones is right now. I think that that's fair to say. I think that Daniel Jones is in his head based on the beginning of the year, and I think that it's affecting the way he is playing. But overall talent, I don't think it's close. Remember, one guy is like at the very point of retirement. The other guy is not. One guy will give you a better chance to win. And we had this discussion in the game. There were some Tyrod scrambles where it's just like there is no fear that he's going to run. And that is a significant portion of Daniel Jones's game that is missing now.
And you know, something else that Tyrod Taylor has the advantage of? He has the advantage of Saquon Barkley. He has the advantage
of Brian Dable taking over the offensive meetings.
Exactly. We have an advantage of a little tweaking in play calling. He has the advantage of an offensive line that
had
it's not really better, but maybe has stabilized a bit with Justin Pugh coming on, and you keep mixing and matching guys at different positions. Maybe we figured out these are little things that add up that give you a little bit of advantage. So maybe it's not just I'm comparing person A to person B. It's, let's compare this offense compared to that offense as a whole.
There's so many factors. Like I said, Brian Dable taking over the offensive meetings. We don't know what that means for Daniel Jones, what that means, how much changed. I know that Justin Pugh and Tyree Phillips are not guys that you're like, I can't wait to draft those as my bookend tackles. But compared to what Daniel Jones was dealing with, I would say they were objectively more steady. Maybe not better, maybe not higher ceiling, maybe not better tools, but more steady than what that he was dealing with. I mean, it's just not close to me.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that there's a quarterback controversy at all. I think the plan was always that Daniel Jones was getting this one contract and they were going to continue looking for their guy. Joe Shane, this is not his guy. He's the best guy to have moving forward. I always think that was the plan. Either next year or the year after, they were going to be looking very hard in the draft. Maybe they're going to have to look 1 year earlier. Maybe they won't. I'm not convinced that they feel that way just yet.
And my piece of advice for Giant fans is let's not treat every word that Brian Dable says like it's the Federal Reserve giving their thoughts
I
for
would
interest
say
rates in the next 5 years.
if anything, ignore Brian Dable more than the previous coaches. He's
Right.
very good at smoking things up.
But what happened was, they were dissecting every syllable of what he said. Like, oh, the language changed. Last week he said he's our quarterback. Now he's praised him. No, save that for CNBC and save that for interest rates and let your stocks go up and down for that. This is the people that are doing that. A, didn't want Daniel Jones in the first place. B, don't like him now. C, or probably, it was Boomer Esiason who at halftime looks like a quarterback controversy. Well, Boomer Esiason also has a talk show in New York City, which all he wants are ratings, calls, and clicks. So, of course, he's going to stir the pot by saying silly things like that. There's no quarterback controversy here at all. There isn't. I mean, unless we see, Daniel Jones has been cleared to play and Tyrod Taylor's out there, then there's a controversy.
Well, here's the other thing. There's no controversy if they don't plan on having Tyrod next year. So
yeah.
The other thing too is that the only discussion is Daniel Jones clearly not the guy? Because if that's the case, it's not like they're re-signing Tyrod Taylor. It just means they're drafting a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a quarterback controversy. The question is Daniel Jones not the guy? Is Tyrod Taylor's ability to move this offense somewhat versus Daniel Jones' inability to move it somewhat, is that evidence that we need to move on? It's never going to be, do we re-sign Tyrod Taylor? And if that's the case, sign me the fuck off. I am going to have some serious questions for this front office if that's the solution. But I don't think it will be.
And also, that doesn't mean, well, Tyrod's the best guy for the rest of this season, because then you're truly wasting this year because you're not auditioning Tyrod Taylor for a spot next year. You're not seeing what you really have and don't have with Daniel Jones. So what's the point?
That brings us all the way back to Geno Smith. Geno Smith was in the last year of his contract. Seeing what you have there does not do you any good. All you did was advertise him for the rest of the league to sign him. So,
which is where we should probably pivot this conversation.
Go ahead.
Because, we were debating before we did last week's show talking about the trade deadline. And we were like, well, if we lose, it's who are we going to move? But if we win, the question becomes, do we become sellers? And if we do, then who do we move? My first question to you, Grump, is question A. Even though we won this game and we are still 2-5, do you think we should be sellers? And if so, why should we be sellers? And do you have any candidates? Because I have a couple.
I think that we should consider being sellers. I don't think that we should be, and this has nothing to do with the win. I guess if we lost this game, it would be, wow, we're in a sad state of affairs. We're definitely sellers. But in terms of the win didn't change my mind from one to the other. It's just like,
agreed. My decision was made even before this week's game.
So should we be sellers? I think we should definitely be listeners. I think we should have an open mind and a checkbook ready for whatever we're moving around here. That said, I think it's important to state that a fair portion of the results that we've seen are attributable to injuries, and also, we were discussing this, when they were constructing the roster for this year, they didn't have the money or assets to address everything they needed to. And they had two options. Their options were get skill players for Daniel Jones because he's clearly hampered by a lack of skill around him, or get depth at the most important piece, and that's the trenches right in front of him. They had that choice. They chose skill players. I think it's a fair choice. I think it's probably the smarter choice. And right off the bat, they got screwed. And that just is what it is. I think a fair portion of the results that we're seeing was putting the money towards talent and not towards depth. And that just, it didn't work out the way that they had planned. And that
Yeah.
sucks, but it is what it is. So I don't think that this roster is like a fucking tear down, sell
You're
everything, move on. We got to
yeah.
cut our losses. I don't think we're that. We're
We're
definitely
not
not that.
we are not a blow it up team.
But
But
we are a
we're in the position we're in right now, and that's
sure.
kind
And
of yeah.
to me, that position is we have a lot to fix. So that
And I
phone
think
line rings. I want to be the one to answer it. Nobody touches that phone but me, Joe Shane.
and
So
I think, regardless of why we are where we are right now a 2-5 team with a very, very minute chance of making the wild card. And even if this team makes the wild card, I mean, the first thing this team has to do is go back to their blueprint before this season started and say, what was our target window to be, our date that we think we were going to be really contenders for a Super Bowl? And if they feel that that date is still there, you make your adjustments to your roster based on that date. If they think that what the core of this roster is going to be longer than they think, that may involve a little more teardown than, well, we're still on track for what that date. Clearly, that date was not this year. I don't believe that date was next year. I think you just keep doing what you're doing. Um, I I think this is almost a blessing in disguise. The season could go one of two ways. One, that we were how we started last year, and okay, we are still doing that combination, you know, rebuild while we are thinking about a playoff run. But now, the playoff run is gone, so we can still go back to focusing on rebuild. There's a lot of guys on this roster that are not going to be part of this team when that real window of success is going to be here. And, you know, whatever reason makes the most sense, whether we think we can move somebody because we can get an extra draft pick or two out of it, or this will provide some cap relief for this year, maybe next year. I think you have to think about it that way. I don't think this is something where you take the guys you think are on your core and blow them out because we're starting over from scratch. I think it's just, how do we put ourselves in position to get the pieces that we need? My question for there's going to be obvious conversation about, well, who should those guys be? And I don't want to get into the obvious guys like a Saquon Barkley or Leonard Williams. Everybody's talked about that. That's for even another day. Even the Saquon thing. Grump, do you have somebody on this roster that you would be willing to part that's not an obvious because of roster or something that you would like to move? Because I have one and no one's talked about it.
I don't know how obvious it is, but I have somebody that I would say is a movable piece for us. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. And who would that be?
that would be a Dory Jackson.
Okay.
I think that yes, he's in the last year of his contract. Yes, it's a large cap number this year, but I think that works in your favor, right? I mean, he's a young guy still, so you can move him to a team that not only needs a solid corner for a playoff run, where maybe their corner got hurt, or something like that. A good team like Buffalo, or a good team like, I mean, I don't want to say Philly. I don't want to say anyone in the division, but maybe Miami, right? Maybe Xavier Howard gets hurt and he's down for the year. But that's a team that has legit firepower to win a Super Bowl this year. You bring in Adoree Jackson. They can absolutely rework his contract and keep him for a number of years. There's
Mm-hmm.
no reason for them not to have an extension already drawn up for him. You do the trade, you get him to sign that extension, you have him for 3 years or something. He's a young guy. He can still be a part of their core going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that with Trey Hawkins exceeding expectations, Cordell Flott, who I think is more of a fit on the outside than on the inside, and Deonte Banks, playing like a first-round pick, I think he's a movable piece. I'm not convinced that he's going to be here next year anyway. I would certainly like him. I would like the veteran presence. I would like the, just all the athleticism that he brings. He's a positive attitude, a positive guy in the locker room. But to me, Adoree Jackson is a very movable piece. He's a desirable piece for other teams in the league, and I think you can get a lot for him in return. The Leonard Williams of the world, like I think that there's value to Leonard Williams for this team going forward. I personally would want to rework Leonard Williams to keep him here, to be a tandem with Dexter Lawrence, to give people breathers on the defensive line so your defensive line is fresh, just like Philly does. Adoree, I can move on. I like what I've seen from Trey Hawkins. I think you can continue to build corner in the draft. I think you should. That's my pick. I know it's not
Yeah.
yours, but that's mine.
Well, I think it's a smart one because, again, if you're trying to get another Leonard Williams, you're basically looking for a starter that's, 1A to Dexter Lawrence. If you're going to get rid of Adoree Jackson, we already have the foundation who this is going to be, and we can always bring in
Correct.
depth pieces as well. And it would be a lot less expensive to do that. So I think that's a good one. Mine is not as obvious, and I'm going to need a little latitude from everybody, and I need you not to hang up and, delete YouTube from your computers when you hear me say this. It's Tyrod Taylor. And let me give my logic for why. Tyrod Taylor, again, I know I rail on him every single week on this show, but he is proving that he can be a capable backup who can play and do things that some starters can't do. He has a locked up value on a team that really needs a backup quarterback to go in a short spurt and maybe even longer and win a game, or at least keep you from losing a game. His value on the Giants isn't really there this year because this team is 2-5. We're not going anywhere. Daniel Jones is coming back very shortly, and you have this asset just kind of sitting there, not cheap, and it's just, and there may be a small faction of this locker room that's like, something, I'm more of a Tyrod guy than I'm a Daniel Jones guy. Daniel Jones has got so many things going against him right now. One more thing, having locker room split about who their quarterback should be, does not help him at all. I think there is value around this league for Tyrod Taylor for a few teams that need a quarterback that have all the other pieces, have a really good defense, have a good running game, that they just need a quarterback. They need a Trent Dilfer, who the Ravens had. They need a Jeff Hostetler, what the Giants had in 1990. And I am targeting one specific team who I think Tyrod Taylor could really help to make them, a real contender, for the conference. That's the Jets. I mean, can't you see Tyrod Taylor with the defense they have and, the receiver weapons and that team right now? We don't know when Aaron Rodgers is coming back. I don't want to see any of these dumb videos of him throwing. He's not coming back anytime soon. I don't care what Wilson's doing. He stinks. Just because he had one good quarter, he is still. If I had my choice of start playing Tyrod Taylor or Wilson, Alex Wilson, it's no doubt it's Tyrod. I think there is some value. We're not, like you said earlier, we're not bringing him back. He's not the future of this team. We don't need a backup of his capabilities for the rest of this season. If Daniel Jones comes back, plays 2 series, breaks his neck, his head flies off, his knees shatters into 30 pieces, something, the season's over anyway. You can live with DeVito. You can get one of these guys that are sitting at home on the scrap heap just to finish the season out, and then you make your decision about Daniel Jones going forward. I just think that there is a locked up value that we could get in return something for him. What are your thoughts?
It's unconventional. I'll say that
Yes.
much. I mean, but you make a good point. I am not as concerned with little brother, so I haven't watched as much Jets as I probably should have. So I can't really say. I mean, truthfully, we were in Buffalo when the Jets game, like literally in Orchard Park at the tailgate. So we saw none really of the Eagles Jets game last week.
Mm-hmm.
We just got the news like everybody else.
This will be a good week to actually do that exercise because obviously we're
Sure.
playing the Jets this week and we'll both get a better sense of what they are. But I didn't want to have this conversation after the Jet game because then the deadline's already over and it's a moot point. But a team like the Jets, where they are, I don't know. I mean, a team like Pittsburgh, where the quarterback is struggling, but they're 5-3.
Well,
You know,
I mean, I think the Jets are the perfect example because I watched
mhm,
some of that Pittsburgh game yesterday, and Kenny Pickett doesn't even have to be that good with George Pickens playing the way that he is. I mean, holy shit, that dude is a monster at receiver.
mhm.
But I guess my point is it's just unconventional. It's strange because so much goes into learning an offense, and there's so much responsibility put on a quarterback to run a functional offense. Um, that it's just a bizarro decision, but everything you laid out makes sense. I mean, that is a team that is relying on its defense at this point. Um, Aaron Rodgers, if he came back in the same season with an Achilles injury at the age that he's at, which, by the way, that is an injury that is nearly career-ending. It's very
Mhm.
close,
Mhm.
even for like a 24-year-old.
And
That
he's
is
63. So I mean,
yeah, I mean he's got his social security stuff all lined up, ready to go. Um, so I would be very shocked if Aaron Rodgers comes back in any capacity this year. If he comes back in any capacity next year, that would be even a little. That would be like 40% shocking for me. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
lie.
Right.
Um, I think that the Jets make sense. It's just he's on the last year of his deal. The Jets would really have to be in sole possession of first place in the AFC East. And it's not out of the realm of possibility. Buffalo is not playing well. New England is not playing well. Miami just lost. Um, it's possible. To me, they have to have so much promise from their defense. And I would move them. You're right. I mean, like, from our standpoint, like, the drawback is, well, fuck. If Daniel Jones gets hurt again, you know what, man? We were talking about this last night. I'm watching the Eagles Miami game. Everything in my body tells me, go Dolphins, go Dolphins. Fuck the Eagles, fuck Philly, burn that city to the ground. But the only chance that the Giants have of making the playoffs is a wild card spot. They're not winning the division. So at this point, being where we are in the season and only just getting our second win, we have to hope that Philly is so far ahead that by week 16, when they play us for the first time, 2 weeks before the season is over, or whatever, 3 weeks, 3 games, that they're already resting their starters because it doesn't matter to them. I
Yeah.
don't think that's going to happen, but that has to be the hope at this point. So, with that being said, if there is just a Tommy DeVito backup or a scrap heap Matt Barkley that got no OTAs, no training camp, or whatever, if that's all that's behind Daniel Jones and he gets hurt again, who fucking cares? Now, my question to you is, what do you think the Jets are going to give up for a guy like Tyrod Taylor? I think that you can get something really serious for an Adoree Jackson. I don't know what you get for a Tyrod Taylor. Because even if it's the savior of the season for the Jets, it is still just Tyrod Taylor.
It depends on how desperate they are at the situation, and B, how serious they think they are with the other 52 guys on their roster. If if they think this defense is so stacked, the second half of our season is a lot easier than the first half. If we really think that we can do something with a guy that, just on his, physical attributes alone, I I don't know, maybe a mid-round pick. And for a roster that needs depth as much as they need starters in the Giants, if I can get a third round pick or a fourth round pick for a guy we're not bringing back next year anyway, and whenever he plays is probably going to slow the growth of Daniel Jones, why not?
Well, listen, I have even lower expectations than a mid-round pick, but I'll tell you this. If they're able to flip Tyrod Taylor for let's say a fifth round pick, okay? So
Fair.
lower mid, right?
That's fair.
And they use that fifth round pick on a return specialist, that's a fucking win. That's a
Sure.
win. We don't have one. If you use a fifth round pick on a guy who can not only catch the ball but can make people miss and run, and that's his only fucking job, that's his only job. He's wide receiver 7 on the roster, and he's punt returner, kick returner 1. I am happy. I don't care at all that we gave up a backup quarterback for that. I really don't. I don't even care if that's our only 5th round pick. If that's just our regular 5th round pick, at this point, I have to point to punt and kick return specialist as like the number 5 weakness on this team at least. Right?
Oh,
We almost
absolutely.
lost this game against a team that they should not have lost against.
I don't need Billy White Shoes Johnson. I need a guy who I know when a punt's being punted, I know the guy's catching it. And, right now, nobody's defending our punt return. They're just like, be around the ball because there's a good chance you may get it from muff or something. So, yeah.
I'm with you. I don't think that has to be flipped for a whole lot. I think that there is value to be had in a mid-round pick. I think that this team very badly needs offensive line depth. I think they also need offensive line starters. But, if let's just pretend that whomever gets traded, you lose a player and you gain a 3rd-round pick.
It's just assets. I mean, it's just like you can combine picks for a trade for somebody. You can, if you're wheeling and dealing on draft night, you can package 3 or 4 picks and move up from maybe. What if we moved up from 6 to 2 because we really like Drake May? If you can make those moves if 100%. you have an excess of inventory and draft capital to make moves. Yes. So it's not necessarily even. Let's get a 5th round pick to secure this problem. It's just like I have more options. I have more flexibility. We'll have more capping. Yeah. And I just think that, everybody, I think a lot of people are zigging towards should Tyrod Taylor be the starter, where I'm zagging and saying the fire's hot right now for a guy.
Keep him playing while Daniel Jones is hurt and build up his trade capital.
In a specific scenario, we could probably squeeze a lot of, water out of that rock.
Now, I'm going to give you the flip side of this, and if I'm a Jets fan and that trade gets made, I'm not stoked about it. I mean, I don't care about giving up a 3rd, 4th, or 5th round draft pick, but to me, I don't think that moves the needle a ton. Because I think you can make the case that Zach Wilson is not the answer. He's not going to help you get through the playoffs or anything like that. But Tyrod Taylor, to me, just doesn't – he's not – I was excited to have him as a backup, to be excited for him to save a season. I thought we were going to be playoff contenders. He's going to get us some wins. It's a tough sell.
Remember the Jet fan.
Listen, but remember the Jet fan is to not like anything that happens until a win is in the books.
But remember where the Jet fan is coming from, though. The Jet fan had all offseason thinking they had Aaron Rodgers. They knew their defense was going to be really, really good. They thought they were Super Bowl contenders, and that died 3 plays into the season. Now they see they're very frustrated that this defense is playing good. They see these receivers and they don't have a quarterback who can get the ball to them. They also, because they're stupid Jet fans, they see those videos of Aaron Rodgers and can we just bridge? Can Zach Wilson just be a bridge until Aaron Rodgers, even on one leg in the playoffs, can do something?
Well, so have you really seen that? Because that to me is nonsense.
It's good. Jet fans are morons. They're stupid.
I mean, it's the same offensive line. You're not going to get Aaron Rodgers throwing from a clean pocket.
I understand that, but you were talking about the Danny DeVito to the Arnold Schwarzenegger that are Giant fans in this town. They're stupid, but they're true believers. So if they think they haven't won anything in anybody's lifetime, but to think if he actually can come back in January, get me a bridge to him because everything else is moot until we're in the playoffs. The prospect of Tyrod Taylor over Zach Wilson, they're going to be like, all right, I'm willing to take that risk.
I have seen some sentiment around Twitter, but around Giant fans of people like Darren Waller being on the trading block. Now, the reason I think that that's silly is because I don't think that you can look at the results of this year thus far and be like, holy shit, what is this team? But I feel like that's just short-sighted. Like, I don't think that this roster is a tear down and rebuild roster. I think this is a currently rebuilding roster. And I think that trading away a guy like Darren Waller that maybe you can get more assets for, it doesn't do you any good because you're just going to use that asset to get a game-changing tight end again.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. And
Well,
he's signed to this deal that's multiple years. If you want to look at this and be like, look, man, I've seen enough. Daniel Jones isn't the guy. I think that's a fair thing to say.
it goes
I
back.
don't necessarily agree with it, but at the end of the day, to rip apart the entire roster, this is still, you have misinterpreted what last year was at that point. You thought that last year was a rebuilt roster, and this coming year is the Super Bowl. We said early on that like the Super Bowl talk is next year. This is let's make it to the playoffs.
Well,
And once
that's
you
the
have
thing.
a plethora of injuries, playoffs are off the table at that point. You're not good enough. If you were a Super Bowl contender and you had the injuries that the Giants had, or the setbacks that Evan Neal and Daniel Jones, however you want to categorize the disappointment, however you want to do it, you're just going back one step. If you were a Super Bowl roster, then you'd be like, all right, well, we should be able to make it to the playoffs. But this wasn't a Super Bowl roster. This was a playoff roster. So now I don't think we're making the playoffs anymore.
Which
that just
assets?
makes sense.
Yeah, which assets? First of all, like I said before, it's a conversation that the Maras, Joe Shane, Brian Dable have to sit in a room and say, what is our realistic window? When do we, based on what this roster is, what our assets are going forward, what draft picks, what salary cap, all this stuff, when do we really think that window is? If that window, we think because of what happened this year, has been pushed out, that is one set of decisions you make. If it's still on track for what they thought before this year and last year, you still maintain your plan. Waller to me is a guy that is in the short to medium term
Window.
asset for this team.
Right.
A guy like, again, Adoree Jackson, Tyrod Taylor, they are not in that they're in a window for right now. Like if we would have parlayed last year into all of a sudden now we're 6-2 and we can legitimately compete with Philly for the division and who knows in the playoffs, different story. But we're not. And the window is not this year. It's probably not even next year either. They are not part of the plan. You move on. Danny Waller to me is part of the plan.
I agree.
So I don't think they're at any point where anybody they think is, but they still have to do a very hard reevaluation
They have to do a reevaluation, but to me, the plan was not this year. The plan was over the course of several years, and Darren Waller was part of that plan. So to move on from him, I have to get an offer on the phone. That's stupid.
And of course, there's always the stupid team. There's always there always is the Raiders out there. There's always the Dallas out there. There's always the Jets out there. They just, when they smell blood in the water, they're like, I don't care. Get them. And, they'll take it. So, I don't care, for someone like, Adoree Jackson's last year's contract. If Philly comes a calling and they're going to overspend for him, take him. We're not winning the division this year. We're not making the playoffs this year, most likely. Is that guy incrementally going to make that team better? We'll see. But I'm more concerned about me and building this team up to being good than worrying about, Philly making them better or Dallas making them better or the Jets or whoever. I have to worry about me first.
Speaking of Philly, they beat Miami last night. They've advanced to 6-1. That was the only other action within the division. Mm-hmm. Dallas had a bye. We played Washington. Any thoughts on Philly and Miami?
I'm just really impressed with their coaching staff. I think, Nick Sirianni he's a dick. We don't like him. That organization always seems to want to troll the Giants as much as do well, but that's a well-coached team. And that's what I came out of that. That's a team that has a plan on offense and defense, and they know what they're doing and they do it. They execute. I mean, there is no debate about the tush push. If it's if it's 4th and 1, pretty much wherever on the field, there's just no decision making. We know this works. We are confident in it. We know our game plan. We're executing that. I just feel like they're just I hate to say it because they're Philly, but they are right now just everything is firing on all cylinders for them. And to take a team like Miami that we saw up close and personal and basically, you know, neuter them as much as you can. And, the one thing is that Jalen Hurts has got this turnover issue that when they play other really, really good teams could be a problem. But that team is just considering where we thought they were just a couple of years ago, their trajectory above what we've done in the last couple of years is pretty astounding.
I want to talk about the Rams game. The Rams and
Sure.
Steelers, I think it was, right?
Oh boy, let's go. I'm ready.
So, look, I am pulling for the Steelers to win. The Rams are a legitimate wild card competitor for the Giants. I am not rooting for Seattle or the Rams or anybody like that going forward. So this does not come from a place of bias when I say the ending of that game is just stupid. It was dumb. LA was down by 1 score. You've got a 4th down scenario with Pittsburgh with the ball with over 2 minutes to go. Okay, so plenty of time. No timeouts for the Rams, but that's okay. They have a near midfield 4th down and 1. Pittsburgh goes for it, and it is clear to everyone with replay and a TV screen that Kenny Pickett's knee went down very early. He slipped, his knee went down, and then he just kind of churned his legs forward. They spotted the ball poorly. They gave him a 1st down. It is outside of 2 minutes, so there's no automatic replay. And just because the Rams have no timeouts to leverage, by the way, leverage for a challenge, they can't challenge. But it is so clear to everyone, the announcers, their on-board official who's part of the announcing crew, everyone sees he is short. It's on the stadium screen. He's short. There's nothing the Rams can do. Too bad. Fuck you. Game over. And that's really what it became. I mean, they gave him the 1st down. There is now only 2 minutes left. The 2-minute warning has expired during this whole conversation. And now Pittsburgh is able to kneel 3 times and the game is over. Now, this to me is just crazy nonsense. It is such nonsense to me because you have, strictly because of a silly rule, the fact that the Rams have no more timeouts to leverage, and because it's outside of 2 minutes, which is the arbitrary threshold that we've decided is the automatic review period, that we just move on. Even though we all know that the very objective spotting of the ball is incorrect, we just move on. Now, I know everyone likes to make fun of me for thinking that there is some value to the USFL and the XFL, but this is something that is indisputable in my opinion. It is very transparent the way that the USFL applies penalties. There is no debate. You have a guy who is mic'd up and on TV communicating with the referees and looking at replay on a screen and telling the officials on the field, no, we need to change it to this. There is no reason why replay has to be an enemy of the officials. This is you and I were texting about this last night, and I thought that we came up with a great analogy. You said replay is a tool for officials to do their job to the best of their ability. And I agree. It is not unlike having headsets in the helmet between a quarterback and the offensive coordinator, because there is no reason to just live in the archaic world of hand signals to get plays in when we can just use the technology available to us to talk to each other like humans and get the best product on the field. There's no reason for it. The officials do not have to see replay as an enemy. That should be the head official, should be the one working the cameras and reviewing every single play in real time because the technology is available to us. A less expensive league is already doing this to good effect. And there is no debate among fans who have money on the line in bets as to whether or not the fix is in. We have a recorded person on TV telling you why this penalty is a penalty, what they are seeing, and who is at fault. We know which official is making this call when we see all this. To me, this is a no-brainer. And we have a team that just lost on complete nonsense to me.
Well, let's go back to why do we have replay in the first place? Replay's job is to minimize the amount of wrong calls. The goal of replay is not to look at something for 30 minutes and say, is that millimeter of distance of green in between a guy's toe and not toe and being inbounds and outbounds. Replay's job is not to punish officials. Replay's job is to take calls that are incorrect and make them correct. That's it. This is a league that, like you alluded to, billions and billions of dollars are at stake. People gamble. Ratings are on the line. All of this stuff that, this team loses the game next week, there may be 10,000 less people in the stands. Ratings go down. Calls have to be right. And what are we relying on in this league? We are relying on people that are not in the same physical shape, trying to cover players that are much better shape, much better, faster, that are older than them, trying to spot with their eyes. I mean, I'm 51 years old. I'm blind as a freaking bat. These guys aren't much, better off seeing as I am probably.
And this isn't to shit on officials either. I think
No.
it's crazy how
No.
correct they are on
We
really
have-
crazy stuff.
We have every other sport. Just watch tennis. They can, the technology they have now, if there's a serve and volley back and forth and the ball might be out, they know in half a second that ball is in and out. Most of the time, it's done from the box. There may be a challenge. If you really don't think it's, I really want to see that and challenge it, fine. In half a second, you see it. That's it. I just don't understand why. I think I do understand why officials view it as adversarial and why they're so against having it as part of the officiating crew. They have a very strong union. They don't want to be seen as being wrong. They will fight it and they will get away with it. So
I think the other thing too is the way the replay is currently set up is that even the nature of the word challenge is adversarial. I mean, like the way that replay is implemented right now is adversarial. It is not even, the euphemisms aren't even correct to make it look like it's a tool for officials to do their job better. It literally is like saying, no, you're wrong. Let's look at the tape, buddy. I mean, it doesn't need to be like that. Look, man, it is the hardest job to be looking at 6 things while sprinting down the field every single play. I mean, it's not just one time per game they have to do this. It's every aspect of their job is running down the field and looking at 6 things at once. It's crazy that they don't screw up more, in my opinion. None of this is to make officials feel bad. This is just, you know what, man? It just happens to be the 21st century. We have tools that will help this game. None of this is set up for them to even feel like it's a tool. So I get why they view it as adversarial.
You know something? If they really wanted to, if they really decided to lean all in for technology, officials, you could cut down the amount of officials on a field because a lot of this can be determined, through technology. So, I mean, they're lucky they still have all the jobs that they do covering a game. The fact that you have this technology and it's not even being used until a coach who just, and sometimes
who has a worse viewpoint most of the time
and a biased viewpoint,
right,
is going to use that. They're never calling. They are never saying, hey, Brian Dable is not saying, something. Dallas got that first down. Why don't you review that? It's just to help you for your benefit. Officials. Rule determination needs to be as unbiased and as objective as possible. Period. If a foot is inbounds or out of bounds, there is a line. It's not close enough. It's the line. And taking subjectivity out of all of officiating is very, very important. And to me, the arbitrary use of replay is just adding to that subjectivity. Ingrain it as part of the officiating crew. Agreed. And who has equal say, because something, a side judge may say something and a line judge can be running over him. You've seen it 1,000 times. And he's like, no. I had a better view. He didn't catch it. And what is they always say on the broadcast every single time, great job by the officials getting together and getting it right. Well, what's the difference if a guy is standing over here or is in a booth who has a better view, and has a huge camera with any angle they have? This is the NFL. They have the best, they have so many different cameras. And then in the big games, they have even more cameras. And if they were being, you know, judicious enough, they'd have even better camera. They'd always would have a camera on the goal line. They'd always have one where the first down. You can do all that. The technology is there. It's just we just fall on, well, there's a bunch of old men, and that's the way we've always done it, and they're protected by their job. And that's the way it's going to be. And until we get past that mentality, until we can break that union, until we have a commissioner, until there's enough money involved or something, costs people real money, it's never going to change. Sucks.
I know a couple of years ago, Cleveland lost a game based on a fumble forward through the back of the end zone and the rules on that. And there was great debate over whether that rule is bullshit or not. To me, the way the Rams lost, even though they still would have had to score a touchdown to tie the game, it hurts more, in my opinion.
Sure.
But we all see it. We all know.
Hey, I have never been angrier in my entire life, and I thank God I did not know the cranky wife at this time. That 2003 playoff game against San Francisco, where the officials got the call wrong on the field and they had no way to correct an obvious wrong call. I boycotted the playoffs. I was so super pissed after that. But it's not because the play was wrong. It's because it was an incorrect call on the field. And when officials are determining outcomes of games, not the play on the field, that is unconscionably a problem. And and what's annoying, like you said, we have ways to clean all this up, make it more, and also make the game go faster. We don't need these 10-minute kind of discussions and stuff.
Oh God, it's brutal.
Tennis, something you don't even go out of sequence and chewing your gum. It happens so fast. Was that in or out? Up, out. Okay, move on. Nobody complains. Like, that's the way it is.
That's all I got for this episode.
I think we used our 10,000 words on this episode for sure.
Just so everyone's aware, the Giants are on the bottom of the NFC East, but they are only like a game out or a game and a half out of second place at 2-5. They're behind the 3-4 Washington Commanders and the 3-2 Dallas Cowboys. They are not far behind, despite everything that we said in this episode. So, I guess we'll foolishly be excited on Thursday when we record our Jets-Giants preview on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. That episode will be available Friday morning as usual. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, at @JustGiantsPod, and tell a friend. Like I said, the Auto Didact thing, try their beer. Take my word for it. It's good beer. Tell a Giants fan we have a good podcast.
And a shout out to Ron from Section 124. Hope he's feeling better. We hope to see you at the game next week.
Until next time, we'll see you. Go Giants.
Go Giants.